So far, Sam Bankman-Fried's legal team has pretty much fumbled what is among the largest financial criminal prosecutions of this decade. On Monday, Bankman-Fried's Bahamian lawyer, Jerome Roberts, was totally misaligned with Bankman-Fried's American lawyers, led by Mark Cohen. SBF's local counsel said he was, quote, shocked that Bankman-Fried was in court at all, adding that his client wanted to see the indictment against him before agreeing to be extradited. That was the exact opposite of what everyone in that room was expecting, including the local prosecutor. Now, Contessa, a source familiar with the matter, says that Bankman-Fried, who spent last night in the Fox Hill prison in Nassau, yet again is expected to make an appearance at another court hearing in the Bahamian capital at 10 a.m. Eastern, where he is supposed to forfeit his extradition rights. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Bankman-Fried's local lawyer agreed to draft the necessary extradition paperwork following yesterday's chaotic exchange in court. It's not clear what involvement Bankman-Fried's U.S. attorneys have had so far. We've tried multiple times to get in touch with them. We're not hearing back. So frankly, until I see Bankman-Fried on a tarmac in New York, I will remain skeptical that extradition is actually happening.
Although, you know, what's interesting is that experienced high-level attorneys tend to avoid reporters and talking to them. And it's, you know, maybe those who are less experienced who would be engaging with global journalists at this point. Yeah. If your sources are to be believed and Bankman-Fried will be able to hand himself over or plans to hand himself over, what's the next step?
So if Bankman-Fried goes through with this and waives his extradition rights, the process will take some time logistically, but will be significantly quicker than if he fought the order. There's definitely a push to get him here back on U.S. soil as soon as possible, should this all go according to plan later this morning. Now, once he arrives in the U.S., a former senior government lawyer tells me that he will likely be held, at least temporarily, at the Metropolitan Detention Center in New York. And crucially, his first hearing should be held within 24 to 72 hours of Bankman-Fried's arrival. That's when he'll enter a plea of guilty or not guilty to those 8 criminal charges. It's also when we'd see a bail hearing.
And also when you'll get to see some action outside of the courtroom, Mackenzie. The press scrums that happen outside of that place can be incredible. We also are getting reports that maybe Bankman-Fried negotiated for certain bail conditions in exchange for agreeing to surrender to U.S. feds. The Bahamians clearly are rejecting multiple requests at granting bail. And listen, I know people who have spent time in Bahamian jails, totally separate story, but they said the conditions were abysmal. What's he up against?
Right. So I'm hearing from multiple legal experts that they anticipate Bankman-Fried will likely plead not guilty and push for release pending trial. That being said, he faces the same uphill battle as he did in the Bahamas, where he was denied bail just a few days ago. He was in the process of appealing that decision when we received word that he was going to agree to extradition. Essentially, he's been labeled a flight risk, in part because of the billions of dollars in missing FTX customer money. Now, whether Bankman-Fried's lawyers actually waived extradition in exchange for agreeing to bond conditions in advance, Bankman-Fried's camp wouldn't weigh in on the record. I spoke to a former federal cybercrime prosecutor, and he thinks that lawyers for Bankman-Fried will cite his lack of a prior record to make the case for bail. But they would likely have to put up a whole lot to secure his pretrial release, including millions of dollars, property, and agreeing to house arrest with electronic monitoring. And even that is further complicated by the fact that it's quite difficult to determine what assets the defendant actually controls right now and is even allowed to pledge as his own.
Yeah, you have to wonder whether the folks who are currently in charge of trying to figure out where FTX assets are would be up for some of those assets being used to secure bail conditions.